Welcome to What's Your Story? I'm your host, Charley Timmins, and every week I bring you a guest who's authentic, genuine, who has information and insights to share with you that you can put to use in your personal and professional life immediately. And today's no different. Today, we're going to be talking about education, K through 12. Now, I know most of you already know everything you need to know about this, but I'm sure today you're going to get some insights that you didn't know and you're going to be happy you learned about. My guest today is Stephen Bollar. Steve is the head of Stand Tall Enterprises. And he goes by the name Stand Tall Steve. And let's get right into it. What do you do in the field of education?
Right. Well, I am I'm a former teacher, principal. I was a supervisor, vice principal, and superintendent here in New Jersey. And so with that background and that experience, I've had over 25 years of experience in education. And now what I do is I go around and I work with forward-thinking organizations about how to think differently, implement ideas. I do leadership development and climate and culture in schools.
For whom specifically?
Specifically, it's in the education market. I work within the K-12 market. That's my background, is education. So I work specifically with education associations, school districts, nonprofits that deal with schools as well. So anything that deals with a group that works with youth in that K-12 area, that's who I work with directly.
So there are probably a lot of people out there trying to help the systems, the teachers, the students, et cetera.
Right.
What makes you different, do you think, from those other folks?
Well, what makes me a little bit different is, number one, being that I have a lot of personal focus and a lot of personal experience in education. I've been in education over 25 years. During that time, when I was in education, specifically as a building principal, I did things a little bit differently. My background was I was an art teacher, so I think creatively. And I found a lot of challenges in my building, and in education overall, there's a lot of challenges. So I did things differently. And because I did things differently, and I love to collect ideas, I love new ideas, I take that into the schools. That's what makes me a little bit differently. And that also, educators, they're tired of professional development. They don't like it. So I try to make the professional development engaging, interesting. I include stories. I use real practical things that have worked, fresh ideas, give that to the educators so that when they are coming back and they're listening to me, they can say, you know what, I can take this right now. I can implement it into my school, into my classroom immediately and get the results. No more theory. Theory's out there. Take your time, read your theory all you want. I want to take some of that theory, put it into practice, and then show the schools exactly how to do it. So that's what I do.
You had shared earlier with me a story about a particular teacher.
Yeah.
Were you a principal at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had somebody in your building and had been there a long time, and there was an inflection point, and you saw an opportunity. Share that with the audience, please.
Yeah, well, what happened was I was a building principal, and one of the things that I wanted to do in my building is I wanted my teachers to always reach out to parents and give a positive phone call. Once a month, once a week, once every other week, whatever it might be. So I had a teacher, she's a veteran teacher, 30 plus years, contacted a parent, positive phone call. Now, when you call the parent, unfortunately the parent had an issue and a concern the teacher didn't know about. So the parent started getting really upset very quickly at the teacher. The teacher instantly, it's human nature, started defending herself. Well, it didn't go well. It got pretty bad. It got to a point where the teacher was upset with the parent was upset with the teacher, and it kind of blew up. Eventually, it got to my level at the building principal. It got to the assistant superintendent's level, got to the superintendent's level, went to the board. And at that moment, through this whole transition of things, I started to realize there's some things that need to be done within education to help relationships, because that's what it's all about. You can get a lot out of students. You can get a lot out of the community, a lot out of teachers when you're developing those positive relationships between them. And it all revolves around the climate and culture of a school. The climate is how it feels when you come in day to day. Your culture are your traditions that happen over time. And when you marry those two things together and you think creatively on how to do it and break it down and try these different things, that's when things start to change. And I started to think, you know what can I do? How can I make this happen? That specific situation when it dealt with the teacher on the phone with the parent, I ended up making what is called a parent phone call flow chart. And what it was is a flow chart on helping the educator talk to parents on the phone, whether everything's fine or it's not going well, so that it turns out to be a positive end. And I started doing more things like that. So that was the beginning stages of how a lot of this really started to come about, where I started to think, you know what, there's more to it. There's some other options out there.
Yeah, what I heard was working within one building, you had an impact on that teaching population there.
That's right.
But now you're speaking all across the country.
Yes. Yeah.
So how did you make the transition from being a superintendent of schools, that was your last role, right?
Yeah.
Okay, to now being a speaker on a national platform? Share that with us. How did you make that transition?
Well, the transition, it kind of came at me. It's not something that I kind of ran out there and said, you know what, I'm going to be in education a while, and then I'm going to jump over and start speaking.
It wasn't part of the plan.
It was not a part of the plan. Truthfully, I was just really thinking that mostly what I would do is, you know, I'd be a building administrator and just run a great school and eventually run a great district. I went to a conference. The conference was in Minnesota, and it was an educational conference. It was all about school culture and climate. So paid my own money out of pocket, went to this great conference. At the end of the conference, there was a speaker. They had a motivational speaker on stage at the end. And so he came out onto the stage, and as I was sitting there listening to him, I just kept thinking, I could do that. I could do that. And I started looking at how he did it, not as much as what he said, but how he did it. And I started thinking about the experiences that I've had and how I could use that as a venue, as a way to get the message out. So once he was done speaking, the conference was over, he was over in another area, he was selling books and materials and things like that. I went to him and I said, look, how do I do this? How do I do what it is that you're doing? Because I didn't even realize that the world of public speaking was a thing. And he's like, hey, stay focused, go get him. And I was like, no, I want the truth. give me the real deal here. And he says, well, you need to go to the NSA National Conference. And that's the National Speakers Association National Conference. He just said, you'll learn everything you need to know there. I said, okay, where's your little conference? I'll go. And he said, this next weekend in Orlando. Now, mind you, I just jumped in my own pocket and paid my own way to get to Minnesota. But I was like, you know what? I got to figure this out. He says, if you want to do it, I can get you registered and everything if you're serious. And he gave me his personal email address. So went back to the room. My wife was with me at the time at this conference, and she was like, we got to get you there. And I was like, are you serious? She's like, yeah. I said, okay, let's do it. So we scraped it together. We made it happen. That next week, I contacted the speaker. He got me registered. That next weekend, I was down at that conference, and that's where I learned about the world of professional speaking. After that, I came back. I got connected with NSA Philadelphia, National Speakers Association Philadelphia. I got additional training, and I started compiling and thinking specifically about what it is that I wanted to do and how I wanted to help education and crafting the message. I did this for 13 years on the side. I was a building administrator and spoke, but now for the last 2 years, this is what I've been doing full time.
So as the kids say today, you had a side hustle there for a while.
I had a side hustle. Most educators do have a side hustle. So my side hustle was using my voice and my mind and sharing with others. Yeah.
So I'm going to get it may be obvious to the audience, but I always ask my guests this question.
Right.
Why do you do this?
Why do I do this? Why do I do this? I do this mainly because I want the very best for education. The accountability in education is it's so high. It's a micro focus on education right now. Educators are asked to do so many different things. And also within education, there's been a very, very heavy push as it relates to those test scores, because that's the evidence they think is what's going to determine if a school is doing well and if a student is doing well. And don't get me wrong, I think there is a time and a place for education, in test scores. But along with that, there needs to be an environment, there needs to be a climate, there needs to be an understanding, there needs to be branding, there needs to be all these other aspects and pieces within education which allow the student and the teacher to be better, to do well, to excel, to grow, because that's the goal right now. Everything's all about growth. So that's my reason for doing what I do. I want to share ideas. I want to get it out there. I want to make sure that schools see different ways to get to the results that they want. I want them to find out and think differently about education. And the sad part of all this is that you're seeing in schools a lot of school shootings. You're seeing some horrible things that are happening in schools. Most of the people that are going back and doing these horrible things in schools are people that were once in that school or currently in that school. If you made an environment in that school where everyone feels connected, is the probability of them coming back to do horrible things, is that higher or lower? I would say that it's lower, much lower. So therefore, it's not so much the focus on the test scores, but it's focused on making connections with students and staff so that they feel like they are seen. They're not falling between the cracks, that they have a connection with someone. If you're connected, that stuff's not gonna happen. I mean, I hope I'm showing you the passion that I have for this.
Oh my goodness.
It means so much. And if I can get out there as a higher purpose of what I can do to make that happen, that's what I'm gonna do.
I want to thank your wife for supporting you
Yeah.
to go in this different direction.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
instead of affecting one building, you're affecting a lot of people.
A lot of
Steve,
people,
we have some sponsors. We need to give them some time. So we're
Right.
going to take a break. We'll be back with Steve Bollar, Stan Stahl Steve, in a few minutes. He's got more to share with you, which I think you'll find very interesting. Be back in a moment.
Images and video clips is another great way to showcase your product during your live segment. Let viewers see how good you really are. And most importantly, there's you and your interview. For less than the cost of a newspaper, direct mail, or a magazine ad, you can leave our studio and within 48 hours have a permanent digital copy of your live segment to link to your social media, embed into your company website, or use in email marketing. Investing in your brand is so very important, and we can't wait to have you as a guest.
Shelter dogs aren't broken. They've simply experienced more life. If they were human, we would call them wise. They would be the ones with tales to tell and stories to write. The ones dealt a bad hand who responded with courage. Do not pity a shelter dog. Adopt one.
Say we've got grit, and we'll take it as a compliment. Because it's our uncommon drive, our spark within, that brings us together and sets us apart. We are temple made. And when others take shortcuts, when others take breaks, when others take the easy way, we take charge.
Add us on social media to watch bloopers, behind-the-scenes footage, previews, and more.
When it goes away, we're back to What's Your Story. I'm here today with a very interesting gentleman, Stan Tall Steve. So I'm going to sort of get to what you're probably wondering about. Where did this Stan Tall Steve come from?
Stan Tall Steve, yes. Well, for starters, I was very fortunate because my parents named me Steve. So that's the first part. And the second thing is I'm 6'7", all right? 6'7", African-American male. When you look at me, 6'7", black man, bald head, got to be a ball player. And so it's what it kind of thinks what people are, but I'm not. I did play basketball in high school. I was pretty good. I did not play basketball in college. But with that, let me get a little bit deeper into exactly how it specifically came about. When I was in 8th grade was the year that everything went nuts for me. At the beginning of 8th grade, I was 5'8". At the end of 8th grade, I was 6'2".
Wow.
5'8" to 6'2". Grew that in one school year, 10 months, not in a whole calendar year.
It must have been painful.
Oh, you have no idea. I went from my knees hurt, my back hurt, and the other thing, my chest hurt, my heart hurt. I had chest pains to the point that I would almost fall to the ground when it would start up. My parents took me to a hospital. They got me checked out at Alfred I. DuPont Hospital. So I'm in 8th grade, my back hurts and everything, and I was slouching over, and I had a Holter monitor. It looked like a purse. So 8th grade was pretty rough for me.
Why were you slouching?
I was slouching a lot, and you ever see anyone who had really bad posture to slouch over? I did that because I didn't like being tall. I didn't want to be a tall person. My father's 6'6", my mom's 5'9", my brother's 6'6". You know, everyone in my family's tall. It's going to happen, but I stood out over everyone else, so I kind of felt bad for short people, and I felt bad for myself, so I started to slouch. With that, I had a situation where I was walking home from school one day, because in my town, people walked. I was walking home from school with a friend of mine. We get to the street where she lived. She walked around behind me. She put her hand on my shoulder. She took her other hand and punched me in the middle of my back.
Ouch.
Yeah, and instantly I was like, girl, what are you doing? You punching me in my back. You know, you're crazy. How are you punching me in my back? Well, when she did that, it made me arch my back up.
Ah.
And she said to me, you're slouching. Stop trying to be small and stand tall.
Now I know where your tagline comes from.
When you stand tall, you don't think small. That's my tagline. Well, when she did that, everything changed. I stood there and stared at her, and I realized I'm not being who I'm supposed to be. You know, I love school. I was in student council. I was in the band. I was in art club. I was in, you named it, I was in it. I was a leader. And I realized at that moment, leaders are not supposed to blend in. It doesn't matter if you're 6'5", 6'10", or 4'11". You can stand tall in everything that you do. Physically, yes, I needed to change my posture and stand tall, but the other part of it is the whole mindset. So with the Steve and the standing tall, that's what it is. It's the stand tall philosophy. Within your schools as educators, as students, as administrators, whatever it might be, you can stand tall in what it is that you do. It's a mindset. It's about how you go through your day and how you make things happen.
You don't have to be labeled a leader, you can be a leader.
You can be a leader.
Exactly
yes.
correct.
It's how you carry yourself, it's how you interact.
So when you come in and you speak and then you do your training sessions, what kind of outcomes have you noticed from the work you do with these different communities?
Well, the outcomes that I get specifically is, number one, I like to go in and give them practical ideas that they can implement right away. A lot of times in education, they talk a lot about theory, all right? Theory is great, all right? That's fine. But beyond the theory, you want to have practical things that you can do right now. Because if you go talk to educators, you say PD, professional development, they're like, oh, here we go again. They want something they can use right away. So that's the one thing. You get practical ideas. And this is not just for teachers, this is for administrators. I have a program called Stand Tall Leadership, which is just for your school leaders. How do you think differently? How do you think creatively, strategically, and creatively that you can implement things and get your teachers to then join in? I have programs called Classroom Management that works. It's all about managing that classroom, because what do teachers really want to do? Teach. And what gets in the way? Behaviors. And the big thing about classroom management is this. This is what I truly believe, and this is what I preach all the time as far as those outcomes are concerned. Classroom management is all about reducing, not eliminating. Reducing, not eliminating. A lot of times teachers want to eliminate the bad behavior. That's impossible. That's not happening. What you want to do is you want to to reduce it so that you can then be able to teach. So it's about getting practical things that you can really do that, and then I make sure that we strengthen everything with integrity, making sure that you maintain that high level of integrity in everything that you do.
So how would you, somebody sitting there trying to make a decision to bring you in or bring some other party in and put them in front of the personnel of the district, what's the value proposition? And you told me a funny story about a famous character.
Yeah, right.
Would you share that with the audience?
Yeah, sure. So the value proposition, the story is basically about Rumpelstiltskin. Rumpelstiltskin. You don't hear that name that often. Well, the whole story behind Rumpelstiltskin is that he slept, and then he woke up to this new world. So Rumpelstiltskin, he slept for many, many years, 100 years. He wakes up, he starts walking around. He's walking around, he's seeing people, these little white things in their ears. He's like, what in the world is that? People are looking at these cell phones. He said, I don't understand what that is. These things are speeding up and down the roads. What in the world is that? So he doesn't know anything that's going on around the world. Then he walks to a school. He's like, oh, I know exactly what this is. It's just like I remembered. That's a problem. That's a big problem. If education still remains the same, now I know you say, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. It is, okay? So let's fix it. Change is something that needs to happen. The world is moving forward and is adjusting and changing, and then education is slowly moving forward. The value that you need to have is that you need to understand that education looks differently. It has to be. There's online learning. Kids can learn things in multiple different ways. So it's important for me to make sure that educators are thinking differently. They develop new ideas. They are taking risks. It's okay to take a risk and try something different. Have that stand tall philosophy, be that leader, and make it happen.
So when you go into a district, what's the role you play? Because you're being invited in, so what role do you assume?
Well, number one, when I go in there, the big thing with me is I want to be an idea generator, all right? So I come with a ton of ideas. I have my book, if I don't mind,
Would you put the slide up with Steve and his book, please?
Yeah. So my main book is called Ideas, Ideas, Ideas. It's a collection of ideas to improve the climate and culture of school. It's like over 100 different ideas that are in here. And these ideas, that's one of the things when I go into school, I want to be idea generator. Even if you don't take these ideas that I have and implement them into the school, it will start the process of thinking differently, all right? That's what you want to have happen.
Okay.
So that's the big piece about that. Also, I want to
But they're ideas that work, though.
Oh, they're definitely.
Okay, they
All
work.
of these ideas are ideas that either I have done in my schools or they're ideas that other schools have done. I collect ideas. Everywhere I go, I ask them, what ideas do you have? And I collect them all and I put them into this book. And then from there, I say, hey, this is an idea that worked, this is an idea that worked, this is an idea that worked. So this way, it gets them thinking. Once you start hearing ideas, you start switching, changing, altering, and figuring out what ways that you can do things. Take risks. The other thing I like to do is make position possibilities. Position possibilities. What if this happened? What if that happens? What are the probabilities of this happening? What's the probabilities of that happening? Just as I had talked about with my classroom management, I talked about you need to reduce, not eliminate. The whole purpose of the classroom management is if you reduce the behaviors, it's not going to make you be able to teach perfectly every day, but will the possibility of that happening increase? Yes. So I like to position possibilities so that they can be able to do what they need to do. And the last piece of it is I feel that I'm a servant to education. I'm here to serve.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when you are a servant or you serve something, you do it openly and willingly, okay? The open and willingness of serving. I openly and willingly serve and share my ideas with others. And if I go in with that mentality, like I am a vessel to share this information, to get this out to you, and it's not self-fulfilling, it's not about all me getting my glory and praise of whoever it is, and I'm here to give, that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, but you have to have some sense of satisfaction that you're making a difference.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So what does that look like? What's the satisfaction you're getting? What are you seeing occur that gives you to say, you know, I'm doing the right thing? This is a calling for me.
Yes. Well, let me tell you a little bit about some of the things that the schools say to me, that my clients, they say back to me when I
That would
when
be
I work with
wonderful.
them.
What are they?
They say, this is the best professional development I've ever had.
They took that dirty word, professional development.
Professional development, because they don't like that professional development, but they say this is the best professional development I ever had. The ones that I love the most is when it says, I've been a teacher for 25 plus years or more, best professional development I ever had. I can use this right away. I've had educators who email me back or post on my Facebook page and things like that. I implemented this the very next day and I saw results. I have a whole thing that I talk about, the results formula. There's a formula that you can use to get results. And I tell them about it. They implement that formula and they get it. Other things that I've heard from administrators who have had me in and I've done my leadership training with them is you've clarified for me what leadership really is. I love hearing that. Because you go into leadership and you think it's this, you think it's that, you think it's the other. Leadership is all about influence. That's number one. That's what it really is.
That's right.
You want to influence others to be able to move in a direction that you want so that you have a vision. And your vision excites your future but frustrates your present. All right? You're excited about the future but you're frustrated now because you're not there yet, but you have to use that as motivation. I share that with them. That's the results that I get. Those are the things that I love to hear. That fills me up. That makes me exciting about education and what it is that I do.
I'm putting myself in the shoes of those students who come into class on a Wednesday after you've had the teacher on Tuesday and they're saying, what the hell's come over Mr. Jones? Because they're fired up, they're excited.
The teachers are hyped up and excited,
They're going to try to do something they've never done before and get the result you said would happen, they get it. They're shifting, they're changing.
They're shifting and changing. That's what it is.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
But man, I love your fire, man. I love your fire.
Yeah, I am excited about it.
At the end of every show, I have my guests look into the camera and speak to the audience, share information, make an ask, make a give, whatever you'd like to do. Time's yours, Steve.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks so much. So what I really like to say is that if you're an educator, you know an educator, you have a kid who's in school, whatever it might be, Reach out to me. My website is standtallsteve.com, and you can set up and we can have a complimentary consultation. Let's talk about what's the situation. It doesn't matter if you're a parent in a school district, maybe you're on the PTO or PTA and there's some things that you would like to do, some things different. Maybe you're an administrator in a school district. You want to start implementing and changing your leadership. Maybe you're teaching the classroom and you're just not happy with what the classroom's going to look like. The start of the school year is coming up right now. Whatever it might be as it relates to education, thinking differently, come out, reach out to me in some kind of way. And even if you're not in education, let's talk, because a lot of these things can transition over into other areas. So it's standtallsteve.com. Check it out. Check out my book if you get a chance to. Great ideas for you as well. And there you go. Thanks.
It's been a pleasure.
Hey, it's really been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming
Thank you so
on.
much. I really appreciate it.
Every week I bring you someone like Steve who's genuine, authentic, who has ideas and insights that you can put to work in your personal and professional life immediately. So again, have a great week. We'll see you next week with another guest on What's Your Story. Be well.